Okay, good evening. I'm going to state this right now. There's a delay in the mic if I sound like I'm speaking slow. We're trying to make sure that everyone understands what I'm saying. First of all, thank you all for coming to this meeting tonight. This is the meeting of the Pendleton City Council starting on June 29th, 2026 at 7 p.m. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to share the ground rules for this evening so everyone understands what the process will look like. This is not our standard council meeting, as you all can see, and I want to explain how it's a little bit different than what we typically do. This evening, the council will be discussing a settlement agreement in front of us. As part of that settlement, there are 2 associated ordinances that we will be considering this evening. All of those are subject to a public hearing. After I'm done giving my overview, we will move into the public hearing. With that, we will start with a staff report, which is given by the city manager, Rob Corbett, as well as Chad Jacobs, our counsel. Then we will move into public comment. One thing that I want to mention is if you have not signed up and you would like to provide public comment, please do so in the back of the room. We have 2 tables and we have 2 podiums. We are going to be as efficient as we possibly can. with this crowd that we have, as well as those that are online. With this, the process that we are taking tonight, all comment, whether for or against, will be taken as it comes to the council. So there will be a mixture of information. Also, a difference is that there will be questions that you can ask that will be responded to at the end of public comment. We want to make sure that we have the community armed with as much information as we possibly can, and any questions that you have are addressed. We will do our best to do that. We will likely have our attorney as well as our city manager responding, but we have our chief of police and the council up here as well. To ensure an orderly and productive meeting, all attendees must conduct themselves respectfully and to avoid behavior that disrupts our proceedings. We do have the Pendleton Police Department that is here. I have said this at our meeting before. My goal is not to have anyone removed from here. My goal is that if you have a question or a concern, that your voice will be heard by the council, and we will give equal time to both sides. If we do have someone who is interfering with someone's ability to provide public comment, I will ask that individual to please stop and that they are out of order. I will give one warning, and then the police will engage in the situation. Again, I do not want to do that, but I want to ensure that everyone has the right to speak and does so in a respectful manner. One thing I appreciate about our community is that you all care a great deal, or else you wouldn't be here. And when we had this very tough conversation as a community last year, you all followed my rules here. But I want to make sure that we have a productive meeting that comes out of this one as well. So with that being said, I am going to call the meeting to order, and we are going to start with a public hearing. This is a public hearing having to do with a matter of general applicability in the city. We will begin with our staff reports. Those in favor of the proposal and those who are against the proposals in front of us will be given the opportunity to speak. After all of you have spoken, I will close the public hearing upon questions being answered by staff, and the council will then discuss the proposals ahead of us. Each person making a statement should step to the microphone and give his or her name. This meeting is being recorded as well as being streamed for those online. All exhibits, documents, and other materials submitted at the hearings will be made a part of the record to the proceedings and kept for the city's files until all potential appeal periods have passed. After you are done speaking, please stay at the microphone so members of the council may ask questions. I would also ask that if you're coming up, that you please direct your comments towards me as the presiding officer of this meeting and not at direct counselors individually. The public hearing is now open, and we're going to start with a staff report by City Manager Rob Corbett.
Mayor and Council, my staff report is in your packet. Obviously, homelessness is a highly contentious issue that has polarized many people in our community. And we're here tonight because—
Rob, if you could speak a little bit closer to the mic, you might have to hold it.
Okay. And we're here tonight because of poorly constructed laws and an inadequate and an ineffective healthcare system. Our attorney, who was hired for his expertise in this matter, estimates that our court costs would be $250,000 on the low end. Local judges, which would give us the highest probability of winning, have already recused themselves from hearing this case. Even if we chose to fight this case and won, we are told the Oregon Law Center would almost assuredly appeal it, and that appeal would be heard in the Salem Court of Appeals, which would be less sympathetic. Again, whether we win or lose, all these court cases would be paid for by the city's general fund and not by our insurance. As I'm sure you've read and will undoubtedly hear from the public comment period, there are two primary trains of thought: fight the lawsuit or settle. It's really that simple. So I want you to understand the information I had to arrive at this decision. For your constituents in the fight the lawsuit camp, the city of Grants Pass, a city twice the size of Pendleton, and with presumably twice the resources, already showed us where this fight leads. They fought it all the way to the Supreme Court in 2024 and won, which was national news. What wasn't nearly as well covered by the media was that in 2025, they settled a lawsuit with the Oregon Law Center, the same group that is suing us now. By my estimation, that required them to pay substantially more than we are proposing you to settle for. Again, these costs are not covered by insurance. The other option, as distasteful as it may be to some of you and your constituents, is to settle this lawsuit for a relatively innocuous sum and put this problem behind us while a team of staff and Pendletonians work to solve this larger societal problem. As your city manager, I believe you hired me to be your fiscal steward with the city's limited resources. Our attorney is telling us that spending the city's limited resources fighting an unwinnable lawsuit is not a good idea, and I would agree. It is my recommendation that you settle this lawsuit.
Thank you. Chad?
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to stand so you can see me a little better. So my name is Chad Jacobs, and I'm a partner at the law firm Beery, Elsner, and Hammond, and we are a law firm that solely represents local governments. We don't take on private clients. We represent cities all across the state, and we then get hired as special legal counsel like we have here tonight to help cities out with specific issues. And our firm has helped numerous cities all across the state on these camping issues. So we're very well aware of the strong feelings that people have about these issues. And I want to first recognize that they're all valid. Everyone's feelings are absolutely valid in this regard. And part of what we want to do tonight is try to take some of that emotion out of this and really focus on how the city can move forward. And so part of what we're looking at this settlement process is what puts the city in the best position to be able to move forward. And so part of what we did through this settlement negotiation process was try to find a way that the city could get out from underneath this threat of litigation and be able to focus on those other solutions that Rob was just talking about. And so that's sort of the primary goal from my perspective about how we can do the best thing for the city, how the city benefits the most and how the community benefits the most from actually moving forward and putting this litigation behind everyone. And so with that, I'm going to provide a little bit of background information on how we got here, a little bit of background information on the settlement, and then explain in a little more detail why I'm recommending that the city enter into the settlement agreement. So first, by way of background, as many of you are aware, and as Rob was just mentioning, there was a Supreme Court case that happened a couple years ago that stemmed up from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is the U.S. Court of Appeals system that governs Oregon and pretty much all the Western states. And what the Ninth Circuit ruled was that it was unconstitutional under the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment, to enforce camping ordinances against individuals experiencing homelessness when you don't have an alternative shelter for them. So if there's nowhere else for them to sleep, then you can't enforce your camping ordinances against individuals experiencing homelessness. Now, that case was a case out of the city of Boise, and the U.S. Supreme Court did not allow review of that, which means it stayed as good law in the Ninth Circuit for numerous years. So Pendleton, along with almost every other city in the Ninth Circuit, went through and removed its camping ordinances, because almost every city had an ordinance that said, you can't camp on public property. So we all had to basically repeal those ordinances and then enact new ordinances. And so that's what the city of Pendleton did with its resting ordinance. City of Grants Pass, which is another city in Oregon and Southern Oregon, did the same thing, and they got sued, and their case eventually made its way up to the Supreme Court. While that case was pending, however, the Oregon legislature enacted a law, because most people in the legal community believe when this issue got to the Supreme Court would overrule it. So the legislature said, well, we don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in statute the basic principles of that case, and we're going to codify it. So even if the Supreme Court overturns that decision, we in Oregon are still going to have to comply with these standards because it's a part of state law. And so that's where we have the state law, and that is the state law that is being used as the basis for this litigation. So even though the U.S. Supreme Court eventually did, as we all predicted, overturned this theory of cases on this Grants Pass case, that didn't really affect us here in Oregon because we had this state statute that still makes us comply with these general principles. So this is why we're still in the same situation here, where our neighbors in Washington and Idaho aren't in the same positions. And so this is sort of unique to Oregon. And part of why this is important for you to understand is because this is a new law, and there aren't a lot of court cases that provide us with guidance on how to interpret the law and how to apply the law. And so what the law says, and I'm going to read it because this is how convoluted and confusing it is, and I want everyone to sort of be on the same page about that. It says, any city law regulating the acts of sitting, lying, sleeping, or keeping warm and dry outdoors on public property that is open to the public must be objectively reasonable as to time, place, and manner with regards to persons experiencing houselessness. Everyone got that? Fully understand it, right? So that's exactly part of the issue that we're dealing with, is that this law is not entirely clear about what it means. So what we have is a handful of trial court cases across the state where they've applied this law. And we've run into situations where most scenarios, the court has found that the law is not objectively reasonable. And so this is sort of the uphill battle that we're climbing when we're looking at this litigation. And so the litigation itself is challenged the city's resting ordinance under the state law, as well as some constitutional grounds. And some of those constitutional grounds are just about equal treatment under the law and how the law has been applied to individuals experiencing houselessness versus other individuals. And so there's a lot of claims and a lot of risk for the city in this litigation. And so based on that, we decided and had a conversation with staff and said, well, what approach do we want to take here? Do we want to fight this litigation and most likely lose? Or do you want to see if you can resolve this and not spend a lot of city dollars on costly litigation where you don't know what the outcome is going to be? And so we worked with the OLC attorneys and their clients and city staff and consulted with the city council at the end of the process to see, okay, can we come up with a deal that is palatable? And I want to be clear that by definition, a settlement is a compromise. This is not necessarily what I would say, this is a perfect ordinance. If I was sitting down to write an ordinance, this is not necessarily what I would do. But at the same time, by reaching a settlement, what we're doing is providing some protection to the city so that we're not necessarily going to have litigation immediately afterwards, because we've had the plaintiffs and their attorneys basically say, yes, we agree that this ordinance is objectively reasonable. And so based on that, we provide some protection from future litigation. The other thing I really want to point out is that this is the beginning of the road, not the end of the road. And so with this litigation, even if you settle, none of these things are set in stone. So as we implement these new ordinances and we see what's working and we see what's not working, you will have the opportunity to amend the ordinances or do something completely different. You know, there's lots of different ideas all across the state, all across the country about how to address some of these issues. And there's nothing in this settlement agreement that precludes Pendleton from taking some of those actions in the future. So I just want to be very clear that, again, this is the beginning of the road. It's not the end of the road. We're not stuck with what this says, but what we are is we're creating a situation where the city can take a step forward and move towards resolving this issue to the best we can, and trying to get partnership from the state, partnership from the federal government, from a lot of those people, frankly, who put cities in this position. You know, we are on the front lines here, but this is not necessarily just a city problem. This is not a problem that's going to be solved here tonight. Frankly, it's not a problem that's going to be solved by the city alone. Pendleton, like every other city in the state, every other city in the country, is going to need help from other partners to try to solve the homeless issue. It's a huge issue, and it's something that we're all going to have to work towards together if we're going to reach any kind of resolution. So the settlement agreement itself, the two primary things it does is that it repeals the existing ordinances and it replaces it with two new ordinances. And the one ordinance talks about sheltering and the other is exclusion. And we separated that out into two separate ordinances for one very important reason. And so previously, the exclusion ordinance was a part of the resting ordinance. An exclusion ordinance is basically a law that says if you have violated a certain city rule, law, or something of that nature, you can be excluded from that property for a certain period of time. So previously that applied just to the sheltering ordinance. So we separated that out of the sheltering ordinance and made it a standalone ordinance. So it applies all across the board to any city rule, any city law, or state law. And if those things are violated on city property, the individual violating that can be excluded from all those properties. So for example, if someone does something at the library, they can be excluded from the library, where previously we didn't have that tool in the toolbox to deal with these situations. And the reason I bring that up is because I think this is an example of how the city can look moving forward, because there's a lot of issues associated with the feelings that everyone has about dealing with individuals experiencing homelessness that aren't necessarily just about sheltering. They may be about other sorts of issues. And so thinking about these other types of ordinances like the exclusion ordinance would be one of those next steps that the city can take as you look towards the future. The second ordinance then is the sheltering ordinance. And that sheltering ordinance replaces the existing resting ordinance. And so for those of you that are familiar with the resting ordinance basically has a map of different areas in the city where people are allowed to rest overnight. The sheltering ordinance follows that same framework and basically relies on those same areas. And what it does is we change it from resting to sheltering because resting was a little bit overbroad. And we define sheltering and we allow people in accordance with state law to shelter on that property. And so basically we've got a system in place that more closely mirrors the requirements of state law, and where we allow people to shelter on those same properties where they're allowed to rest now. Those two ordinances will be what the council will consider later tonight after public comment. And those will replace the existing resting ordinance. In addition to the ordinances, we've got a couple of other settlement proposals. And those proposals are all listed in the agenda packet tonight. But a couple of crucial things that I want to point out. One is that under the law that I just talked about, the plaintiffs, if they win the litigation, are entitled to attorney's fees. And so rather than trying to collect attorney's fees from the city, the other side has agreed that we can put that money towards services instead of paying their attorney's fees. And those services would be helping to pay for either a day shelter or a warming shelter to try to give people places to go off the street and make it a better situation for the entire community. So that's one of the crucial parts about this. The other aspects of the settlement agreement really relate to implementation of the ordinances. And it talks about signage, for example, to make it very clear for everyone where camping is allowed and where camping is not allowed. It also has provisions related to make sure that we have some ADA accessible campsites, and then also a requirement that we sort of do what I'm calling a test program for one bathroom that'll be open all year round. And so we have to see how that works out. Obviously, there's been a lot of issues with bathrooms and use of bathrooms all across the state. But I think everyone would agree that providing a place is better than finding stuff on the street the next day. And so that's part of what we're trying to do as far as the restrooms are concerned. That's kind of a really quick overview. Again, I do want to stress a couple of points about why to settle. Rob hit on the main one is sort of fiscal responsibility. I told the council this, and I joke around with people all the time. I have 2 kids in college. If people want me to litigate, I will gladly litigate, but it's not a good use of taxpayer dollars. I'm just going to be blunt. And for that reason, I would not feel good about litigating this case for you all. But if that's what the council decides, then that's absolutely what we will do. But I would not recommend that because I don't think it is a good fiscal use of dollars. I also want to say that litigation, in addition to being costly, is very uncertain. And part of what could happen here is that if we go to trial and what the plaintiffs have asked for is something called a preliminary injunction. And a preliminary injunction is basically an order by the court which could restrict the city's ability to enforce its existing ordinance. And so what you saw in places like Portland and Grants Pass is when that preliminary injunction was issued, the city had no law to enforce, and it sort of became a free-for-all. And for those of you who may have driven through Portland or visited Portland and saw tents everywhere, that's part of why, because the city no longer had an ordinance it could enforce. So there's a risk if the court issues a preliminary injunction that you could end up in a similar situation in Pendleton. And so what we want to try to avoid is some of this uncertainty about litigation. And so fiscal costs, uncertainty are 2 big issues when you think about settlement and whether or not it makes sense to move forward with a settlement agreement. Then finally, as I mentioned before, I really do think that the settlement provides a process for the city to move forward, to focus on some of these other issues about how the city wants to address the homeless issue without the threat of litigation hanging over your head. You can really focus on whether there's other creative ideas, other ideas that the community has, other ideas that council or staff have, and really focus on how do we move forward towards a solution to the best we can, as opposed to saying, fight the litigation. So obviously, members of council may have different opinions. I fully expect several of you have different opinions. This is just my professional opinion and the why I'm making this recommendation to the city council. I look forward to hearing your comments. I look forward to answering your questions. And thank you all for being here tonight. I know it's a really big issue, and you taking time out of your night is really meaningful, I think, to everyone up here, including myself.
Okay. What I would like to ask as well, in the packet, we have a memo from the police department. And at this point, this is a hypothetical, but since we are discussing the settlement and the ordinances, I would like Chief Nelson to come up and share what enforcement would look like.
Madam Mayor, City Council, Tony Nelson, Pendleton Police Department. So we have a preliminary plan. I believe it's in front of all of you. Get really loud. Can you hear me back there? All right. Again, Madam Mayor, City Council, Tony Nelson, Pendleton Police Department. So we have a preliminary plan of how we are going to enforce this new ordinance if it is so voted into tonight. We're going to be utilizing a code enforcement officer. They're going to be allowed to shelter in resting locations or sheltering locations for 24 hours. So if this becomes enacted, our code enforcement officer will start day one. We will check every single sheltering location, starting from the east end of town, working through the west. We will notify, or excuse me, take pictures and create incidents to document the place and the location, time, and what the structure may look like. He will do that across the entire sheltering locations. 24 hours later, he will come back, do that again. At that point, bring one of our law enforcement officers with him to make contact with either the shelter location or if there are occupants inside. At that point, we will then document again that we have reached the 24 hours and begin the 72-hour time frame that is required by Oregon law. At that point, we will issue all the proper documentation that will be set forth in this ordinance to include that they're violating the sheltering locations where they may move to, and the fact that they must move all their property within 72 hours. At that point, we will continue every day in case they move. We'll document if they've moved or not. If that particular sheltering location has not been broken down and moved, and at this point it has to be 150 feet or it has to move to. If it has not moved, the code enforcement officer will again make contact with a law enforcement officer. And at that point, the sheltering location will be cleaned up by our contract, which is Eagle Basin Contracting. They will be removed from that location. They will then be issued paperwork excluding them from the property for, depending on what the amount of violations this has been. First offense will be 30 days, second offense 60 days, third offense 90 days. And at that point, they will no longer be allowed to be within that location within 150 feet.
Thank you. At this point in time, do we have any questions from the council before we go to public comment? Okay, Ellie. Councilor McBride.
Hello? Okay, there we go. I just want to clarify that I believe the ordinance actually says 250 feet, which is roughly the size of a city block.
You are correct. Okay. Hearing no other questions, we will move to public comment. So we have staff that has taken a list. We will go through that list as well. Assistant City Manager Byram will be the one at the end of the time limit. Everyone has 3 minutes. He will be the person letting you know that your time is done. Okay, so we're going to start. If I get to your name and you've changed your mind, I totally understand. And you can just not stand up. But what I would ask is that you come to the mic closest to you. We also have individuals joining us online. And if we have anyone there, staff will let them in for public comment. So we are going to start number 1, Patrick Gregg. And please state your name first and last name, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Patrick Gregg. I'm a member of Neighbors for a Better Pendleton, and I'm here to deliver our message tonight. I spoke to all of you almost a year ago, and I asked you to take considered decisions to improve safety and livability in our community. The settlement that you are being asked to approve does the complete opposite. It creates a series of unfunded mandates and creates the most far-reaching ordinances in Oregon on the homeless issue. Let me be as clear as I can. This is going to be a multi-million-dollar settlement over the course of its time. Take it to the bank. The other thing I think is important to note is that
I would please ask that he's able to speak.
the settlement is more than the plaintiffs would get with a total and complete victory in court. It has additional and new terms that are beyond what the plaintiffs are asking for in the circuit court. And that's why I'm here on behalf of Neighbors for a Better Pendleton. We would like you to consider a different course. In particular, we would like you to commit to a process to amend the current ordinance or revise it in a way that is reflective of the people behind me, the voters and citizens of this community, so that we can put in place workable ordinances that reflect the values of this community and not something that was drafted in large part by the plaintiff's lawyer. I want to talk very briefly about this text of these ordinances. I think it's very critical we understand what we're dealing with here. The exclusion ordinance in particular will make it more difficult to exclude people from city property. In addition, it maxes out at 90 days. By its very terms, most exclusions are for less. There's a limited type of activity that will get a person excluded. And it's only applicable to the particular property where the event happened. Let me give you an example. If you get excluded from the library, you can trot on over to Pioneer Park and you're home free. In addition, and this is the most problematic part, both the resting ordinance and the
Madam Mayor, time.
Finish your sentence.
they have variances that allow the city to suspend the application of these ordinances on a case-by-case basis, and it has to be appealed to municipal court. I urge you to listen to your citizens. This is harmful to the taxpayers and the voters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask for our next individual. Chris Cockburn.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. My name is Chris Cockburn. I'm a local business. Sorry, it sounds very odd from this microphone. Local business owner and property owner. I'm here to urge the council to not vote in favor of this settlement. I don't think it's good for the city of Pendleton in the short term, and especially in the long term. Additionally, I hope that each of you as counselors have come to this meeting with an open mind. I hope that you have not, sorry, can you hear me? Is that better? Okay, thank you. I hope that each of you have come to this meeting with an open mind, that you haven't decided what your votes will be ahead of time. I also hope that you listen to the public comment period. You listen to your constituents and you take to heart what they have to say. I hope that this meeting is not just simply public relations window dressing, that you will be listening to your constituents before you vote tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move on to Casey Hunt.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's incredibly and frustrating to be a member of this community, and I know many others share the same sentiment. The handling of this lawsuit from the very beginning, which court documents indicate has been in the works since 2025, has been deeply disappointing. The city repeatedly refuses to release documents or respond meaningfully to public records requests submitted by citizens. It also failed to disclose the material terms of the proposed settlement in its initial press release. Then, just days before this meeting, hundreds of pages of settlement documents, leaving the public little time to review or understand one of the most consequential decisions the council has faced in years. That reflects poor planning, disorganization, and a failure to prioritize transparency. Documents of this magnitude should have been prepared and released well before the meeting was announced. That's basic project management. For those reasons, I respectfully ask the council to delay consideration of this settlement. This agreement commits the city to significant long-term obligations, yet the public has not had a meaningful opportunity to review those documents, understanding their implications or evaluate the cost. If the city is prepared to make these commitments, it should also be prepared to provide the public with a complete fiscal analysis, not just the direct settlement payment, but the ongoing costs of the additional services, facilities, staffing, and enforcement obligation this agreement creates. We deserve a better Pendleton. Thank you.
Okay, Winston Hill.
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to come speak. We appreciate all of you coming to speak your minds and let the city know exactly how you're feeling. One way or another, this is very important. This turnout for your civic responsibility is to be commended. So we appreciate the opportunity. I do have a couple questions. First is, why can't the city update the ordinance as well as fight the lawsuit at the same time? And also, as far as the financial, the financial responsibility that the city is going to see according to this settlement, can we get a study done to see exactly what the responsibilities are going to be and how they will be? Boy, this mic is terrible. So, yeah, it's terrible. Also, the last question is, when was this agreement or the basic framework for the agreement agreed upon, the settlement agreed upon? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, our next person, John Norman. We will answer the questions at the conclusion of public comment.
My name is John Norman. Yeah, this mic stinks. Am I to understand that grants pass one at the Supreme Court and these jackals take them on and win a lawsuit and now they're coming after us? Is that right? Well, I say we got to fight them. I don't like this. This is a very strange handout. These people, in part, are suing us because sitting on blankets in lawn chairs is indistinguishable from homelessness. Is that what they said? Sure looks like it. I think we got to fight. If they can go to the Supreme Court, maybe somebody else can. Is our opponent the state government? Is that the difference in the grants pass thing? Is it the state government that's attacking our ordinances? I don't get it. This year, according to the EO, Louisiana made camping a crime in public and created a homelessness court program. Other states are making laws. All of this seems to design to protect the city. So who's protecting us? We've got maps showing camping along the riverfront. Mrs. Lang was nearly murdered on the waterfront, on the riverfront. Amy Jane was murdered a block and a half from City Hall. They're hiding in plain sight with the homeless. I'd like to thank the police. I know they're doing everything they can. We can do better, and we demand better.
Okay. Our next individual, I would just ask as a reminder, you are entitled to your opinions. Please allow people to speak up here. I may not be able to respond to everyone here, but if you have a comment to make, you will be able to make it at the mic. Marge Normanton Jones.
My concern is how we sustain with our limited budget any kind of a shelter or enhanced camp. I just don't see how, when we're struggling to do our streets and our swimming pool and keep taxes at a relatively low amount, that we can even think about an enhanced camp. And if we can't maintain it, then that seems to me that it becomes a bigger liability than what we already have. Thank you.
Okay. Our next individual is Casey White-Solman.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Casey White-Solman, and I'm here tonight as a Pendleton resident, a parent, a full-time worker with an office downtown, and someone who cares deeply about the future of our community. Like many people in Pendleton, I recognize the city needs to update its ordinances to comply with Oregon law. I don't think that's the issue before you tonight. The question is whether this particular settlement is the best path forward. I don't believe that it is. I am not here to criticize people who are homeless or struggling. Every person deserves dignity, compassion, and access to services. but our tax-paying residents deserve safe, welcoming spaces as well. We should not accept the idea that we have to choose between compassion and community safety and accountability. I believe we can achieve all of that. That's why I'm asking you not to approve this settlement tonight. Instead, reject this proposal, continue negotiating, and bring back a significantly revised agreement that not only complies with state law, but protects our community and is developed through a more transparent process with meaningful public input. Pendleton deserves a solution that is both lawful and thoughtful. Most importantly, the people who live here deserve the opportunity to help shape it. I would ask you to ask your constituents here in this room tonight, and there are many, how they feel and how they would vote on this issue, because you represent us. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, Rush Kishba.
I'm actually speaking for Debbie. She's in Dallas. So city manager.
If you could speak into the mic, please.
Oh, I'm actually speaking for Debbie. Okay. She can't be here. She's in Dallas. So city manager, Pendleton mayor and city council. I apologize. I cannot be here in person. So I'm on a business trip in Dallas until July 2nd. Even though I'm not present today, I've been present in the community June 22nd, 23rd, and 27th. I've made myself available for the people of Pendleton to come and express their concerns. This is what I've learned. The citizens of Pendleton are not feeling heard. They are angry that the town they love is becoming a slum and a little hope on the horizon. Over and over, I have heard, it's not that I am not compassionate, but that we are being asked to tolerate such a high levels of drug abuse, chaos, crime, and filth. Some have indicated if our city council does not become proactive for the citizens in Pendleton, they may leave. After reading Mr. Jacobs' explanation of the lawsuit and settling that there are a few statements I feel are vague and misleading, Mr. Jacobs states that the plaintiffs were cited for resting and also states whereas other housed individuals were not. When does resting become camping? So homeless addicts are allowed to rest for 24 hours with a 72-day warning. That's not camping? Can you compare the homeless addicts to the housed in this situation? Did the housed individuals bring all their worldly possessions with them to the park to rest, or did they bring a Frisbee and a lunch? Did the housed individuals exceed the 8 hours in the park? Are they not being treated the same because their situations are not the same? If the city council chooses to settle, will this not hurt and damage the city of Pendleton's bond rating? So if Pendleton wanted to vote for an indoor pool, wouldn't this damage our ability for receiving that bond? In closing, I say vote no. If for any reason you just hired a new law group 2 weeks ago and the people of Pendleton saw the actual details of the lawsuit late Thursday, June 25th, as the city council members actually talked to the people in their ward, this is too much, too soon, and just careless. Please listen to the people of Pendleton and don't react out of fear or what is easy. You can't really think if you vote yes. This is a nightmare that will go away. It will not. It will grow. Respectively, Debbie, I have a little over 100 signatures and encourage you to vote no. Would you like this packet? She's also got some. Okay. And
You can give it to staff.
Pardon me?
You can give it to staff.
Okay, thank you. And I want everybody to know I'm 79 and I just got my student loan paid off.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next person. I believe it's just a first name, Terry. Teri. Do we have Terry? It does not have addresses. I believe this is Terry. Are you Terry? Nope. Okay. We're going to move on to Shannon Reinhardt.
Hello and good evening. My name is Shannon. I'm the owner of Hello Honey in downtown Pendleton. I want to be very clear. This isn't about a lack of compassion. Those who know me, this mic is terrible, know me know that that is something I don't lack. I always have tried to help people, support my community, and give others grace when they're going through difficult times. I believe people who are struggling deserve help, dignity, and support. But I'm standing here today because it feels like the people who own businesses, work downtown, and raise families in this community are constantly being asked to just deal with it and keep being patient. The problem is patience starts to run out when it becomes a daily reality. I don't have to imagine this because I live it. I've arrived at my business to find people sleeping on my property. I've cleaned up garbage, feces, disorderly chaos of a woman taking a bat to a man, and the list goes on and on. I worried about walking to my vehicle. I've had customers and my coworker feel uncomfortable. I've dealt with situations no business owner should have to face, including someone trying to light my business on fire while I was inside. I'm sure you all could imagine the pure fear of that alone. This business just isn't a building to me. It's my livelihood. It's years of hard work, sacrifice, risk, and investment. It's how I support my family and serve my clients. I oppose this proposed settlement. My concern is that the decisions we make today just won't affect us today. They will set the direction for our community for years to come. As a downtown business owner, I have to ask, are we simply expected to accept this as a new normal? Am I expected just to step over people sleeping in front of my business, clean up human waste and garbage, and explain to my customers and employees why they don't feel safe coming into my salon? That is not what any business owner is signed up for. It's not fair to the people who have invested their lives, their savings, and their futures into this community. Compassion should never have been asking one group of people to shoulder an unreasonable burden. We can support people in need, all while protecting public safety and health and the businesses that keep our downtown alive. For me, accepting this settlement as it stands sends the wrong message. It tells business owners and residents to keep waiting, keep adapting, and keep carrying the consequences. I don't believe that is the right path for Pendleton. Thank you.
Okay, Donna, we've had 10 people testify. Do we have anyone online? Okay. Okay, hearing none, we're going to go on to our next individual, which is Lee Reinhardt.
My name is Lee Reinhardt, Shannon Reinhardt's husband. I'm going to keep it short. I'm just going to ask that you guys reject this proposal for many reasons we've already heard and many more we're going to hear. Council, I urge you to listen to your community. We've spoken a year ago, and we spoke just a few weeks ago when a good portion of the council got voted out. We need to be listened to, and we're not being listened to, and I ask you to do that.
Okay, our next individual is, I believe, Sue Ellen Smith. Sue Ellen. Sorry, I'm trying to read some of these. There you go. Thank you.
Good evening. I just have a question. You had numbers for the litigation, but
If you could speak directly into the mic.
okay. But what about the numbers on creating the ADA accessible sheltering locations, provide the ADA accessible bathroom, maintain those facilities, provide sanitation, utilities, repairs, and ongoing operations? What are the costs on those?
We will respond to that with our
Yes.
questions.
What are the costs as a long-term projection?
Staff will be prepared to answer that with the rest of the questions.
Okay, all righty. Okay, but I do want you to know I am totally opposed to this.
Thank you. Okay, Penny Gavette. Okay, next individual, Ken Hackett.
Good evening. Ken Hackett, Pendleton, Oregon. I can only speak for
Speak into the
myself,
mic.
but Ken Hackett, Pendleton, Oregon. I can only speak for myself, but with the show of audience raising their hand, I ask that you do not vote for this proposal.
Okay, please.
Assuming
direct
that
questions to me.
that's not going to happen, before you go ahead with further ordinances, I would like you to delay that for the incoming new city council.
Okay, the Pendleton Chamber of Commerce. I imagine that would be Executive Director.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. My name is Dr. Cheryl Viola. I'm the CEO of the Pendleton Chamber of Commerce. As many of the other testimonies have discussed, the Pendleton Chamber Board of Directors encourages you to oppose the settlement as proposed, mostly because of the cost that it is on the businesses. They have to endure, as what Shannon already talked about, with the garbage, the feces. They've had to endure extra expenses with security. And where is this dollars coming from? Now, as for some of your proposed ideas, the chamber has 2 ADA accessible bathrooms, which we've had to shut down because of the disrespect from the homeless community. We have no intention of opening it back up. So how is your suggestion for another ADA bathroom going to solve the problem? We called last week about having the police come to remove homeless people in the heritage parks, and nothing happened. So according to your maps, nobody knows where these resting places are. And when business owners call to have them removed from their properties, there is no response. So please take in consideration that from the entire board of directors that we are opposed of this and suggest better options. Thank you.
Okay, Dwight Johnson. Dwight Johnson. Dwight Johnson.
Pendleton City Council and fellow citizens of Pendleton, I see what you mean about this mic. My name is Dwight Johnson. I am board chair and executive director of Neighbor to Neighbor Pendleton. We operate the Pendleton warming station in the wintertime. First of all, let me say that while all of us at Neighbor to Neighbor are committed to helping the homeless in our community, we also understand and in some instances agree with the concerns expressed by our local businesses and community citizens. I want to preface our position regarding the settlement agreement with these observations. We often hear the terms houseless community, the homeless, and other collective nouns used to describe these people as if they were a homogeneous group. I can tell you that this is far from the case, and each person afflicted with homelessness has their own story to tell and path they have taken. All are individuals and deserve to be treated as such. We believe that nobody should have to sleep outside when the risk of hypothermia is substantial. We believe in compassion, and we believe one of the measures of a just community is how the least within that community are treated. Everyone knows that there are certain human needs that we all have. Among these are the need to eat, sleep, and take care of bodily functions. These are not things we can control, and therefore things that can be prohibited. That is why we provide a low barrier shelter, meaning that all homeless individuals are welcome at our facility as long as their behavior does not compromise the safety or our ability to provide services. And that is why we at Neighbor to Neighbor believe that any strategy adopted by the city should embrace these same principles. Regarding the proposed settlement agreement, Neighbor to Neighbor neither supports nor opposes the specific remedies outlined in this agreement, including the revised ordinances. We would like to clarify our position regarding item 4C, in which Neighbor to Neighbor was specifically referenced as a potential recipient of funding to expand shelter operations. We want the council to know that our organization has not committed to expanding our operation or accepting these funds. We have had conceptual discussions on this matter, but that is all. However, Neighbor to Neighbor has responded positively to a recent request for interest in using potential grant funding for this purpose and is willing to enter into formal and detailed discussions on this matter with representatives of both the city and CAPCO to determine the feasibility of such an undertaking, including both the willingness and capability of our organization to proceed with what would be a significant change in our current operations model. In conclusion, we think the city should work diligently for a solution that provides for the basic human needs of our homeless neighbors. We are willing within our capabilities to be part of that solution.
Okay, Ryan DeGraft.
Thank you. My name is Ryan DeGraft. I'm a Pendleton resident, a father, and a downtown business owner. Many of the comments that came before me kind of enumerated the many reasons that we should oppose this settlement. But one more that I'd like to point out is that some of the terms of this settlement actually expands the services available to homeless people in our downtown area. And in and of itself, that may not necessarily be a bad thing. We're all compassionate. Nobody is arguing against compassion, but there also needs to be a recognition that anywhere in this city that we see services, we also find open air drug use, drug dealing, littering, defecation, vandalism, theft, and an endless number of other headaches. So by expanding these services downtown, we'll continue to make that problem worse. We heard testimony last August at the city council meeting from homeless individuals themselves who have come to this town because of the services that we offer. We have talked to them ourselves on an individual basis, inquired about what brought them here. They will tell you it's because we have so many services. Please do not submit to this settlement. Thank you.
Tom Humphrey. Jesse Peterson.
Hi, my name is Jesse Peterson. I live and work in Pendleton. Hi, Mayor. Hi, City Council members. I'm here in support of the 5 incredible and courageous women who put themselves at risk to fight for justice in their community. They have acted out of so much love for the people around them instead of fear. They are setting an example for all of us. The policies that have been in place, along with the high barrier institutional assistance offered, are directly correlated to the deaths of a number of community members, homeless in particular. Although they were put in place prior to changes in Oregon state law, there is no question in the harm that was caused by them and could be caused in the future if we do not listen to those directly affected when creating these policy changes. The city may not admit to any wrongdoing, but it is wrong to treat any person as less than, disposable, and essentially criminalizing their very existence. To fight this is to dismiss the concerns of the people who you have harmed. I hope that the city chooses to do right and right the wrongs, settle, and listen to the voices of the survivors.
Paula Hall. Okay, thank you. Darwin Bryce. Barbara, I would ask that you sit, please. Darwin Bryce is the name that I called. Okay, if you could sit down, please.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Darwin Bryce. I'm a citizen of, or resident of Pendleton, citizen of the United States. I respectfully request that you reject the proposed settlement. Thank you.
Okay, Barbara, you're next. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening, Council. I'm Barbara Ann Wright. I reside in Southeast Pendleton near Washington School. I've been a candidate for the Oregon House from this district. And to you, sir, you need to go back and take a squint at what was said in 1982 when Eastern Oregon State Hospital was being closed. Our Oregon legislature was told by the federal government they would have funding to give to us to build regional mental health facilities. That would take care of part of our homeless issue. That was 1982. This is 2026. I haven't seen a nickel of it. Nobody else has either. And when you look at how dirty Pendleton is, I'm prejudiced. I was born on the 20th of April at 5:35 p.m. in 1951. I've lived the majority of 75 years here. This is the dirtiest I've ever seen it. I urge this council to have second thoughts about that agreement and renegotiate that puppy and go to the Oregon legislature and demand that they provide us with the funding to build a regional mental health facility large enough that we can house some of those who are walking the streets with schizophrenia, bipolar, and other mental health diseases. And I'm willing to help on a committee anytime to get a solution found. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, Cricket Nicholson. Thank you. Sorry. We do have the option if you want to write a comment, if you're not able to, we can do that as well. Betty Romero.
My name is Betty Romero. I grew up in this community, although I moved away and I recently come back. Thank you, Pendleton Mayor and City Council, for allowing us to express ourselves. This agreement, I feel, is providing more privileges without responsibilities. And I know that every resident here in Pendleton has a responsibility towards keeping our property clean and to take care of ourselves. And what I'm seeing with this homeless situation is that we're having to clean for them. We're having to do things for them. And that would be nice. I would like to have that done for me as well. And they need to step up and they need to clean their own messes. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Emsland.
I don't live in Jerry Emsland, Pendleton, Oregon. I live on the edge of town. Had some properties here in town, sold them. There at the end, in the last year or two, we had several problems. We had to increase our security. We had some vandalism. We had people coming into the buildings. And it seems like this is all stuff that's just increased over the last few years. I'm glad I'm not on the city council, and with Rob, I don't envy his job at the time either, but I haven't read the agreement enough to make a solid decision on that one way or the other. But it does look like there's a chance that we could have some, excuse me, I have some notes here. But anyway, the chance to set some precedents. And until that law or that agreement is settled and more attorneys than my ability look at it, there could be some precedents in there that could hinder us going on. As far as the ordinances, I think that's past due, but it's definitely needed. We have the people that are going down there and plugging in their phones on Main Street, and they'll just spread out there, which is uninviting to the tourists and the people that we have going down and using that portion of the town. I think in that ordinance, if we could have something that had a little more meat in the violations, and if the police are going to go and get an inventory of who's living down there, and then have that running inventory of those people. And if they have so many violations, let's address those and let those people know that either get out of town or face the consequences with stiffer penalty. In review of some of this stuff too, you know, we know that there's drugs out there, and how many of those people that are around there are within the limitations of our schools. We have the Early Learning Center and things like that, that we know that there are people that are in violation of existing ordinances. So we need to get a little bit more meat in that. This is a little touchy subject here, but we have the only methadone center in Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon. Serve 200 people a day at the methadone center. I know that the Salvation Army has had to loan some of them money to get a gallon of gas so they can get back up to Washington and get back out of the state. And at what point are we providing incentives for some of these people to come to our community. So can we address some of these services that we're providing now and making this a more advantageous place for them to live? So anyway, I don't envy you with your decision. There's a lot of work to be done, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Thank you.
Hey, Karen Power.
Madam Mayor, City Council, my name is Karen Power. I have taught in Pendleton schools for 27 years, 36 years altogether as a special education teacher. When I hear people refer to some of our homeless residents as those people, I know them on a first name basis because they were my students. To keep saying, just fight it, is not a solution. Today, my husband and I drove to Walla Walla to see a solution that they came up with years ago to see if it was still there. And it is. What my point is not that we necessarily replicate what Walla Walla or Stepping Stones in Hermiston has, but to say there are solutions. And just thinking that if we don't have a solution, we can push those people who are our residents away, I think is just wishful thinking. Thank you.
Okay, Cody Jones.
My name is Cody Jones. I'm an incoming city council person, not up there yet. But if I was, I would vote to oppose accepting this. I'm just going to use this time to ask a few questions. How many times has your firm recommended against settling cases like this? That's one. Number two, has anyone calculated the cumulative cost over the next decade, 5 years, 3 years, anything to defending the lawsuit? Does approving this settlement make Pendleton more vulnerable to future lawsuits if the city later changes course? And I have very different ideas than some of you. I plan on changing course. Has the city analyzed whether this settlement becomes evidence against Pendleton in future legal actions? Why was the settlement requiring downtown sheltering chosen instead of alternatives used by other Oregon cities? Why does it have to be limited to downtown? Why 1.5 miles from City Hall? This seems ridiculous. This really seems like somebody's trying to entrench a problem instead of fixing a problem. Did the city evaluate locating shelter services outside of downtown at all? Just curious. So if this settlement truly is the best option for Pendleton, why hasn't the city released complete legal analysis, long-term cost projections, and comparison of alternatives so the public can independently evaluate that claim before the vote? Lake Oswego has maintained ordinances that prohibit camping in parks, close parks overnight from 10 p.m. to 6 p.m. They're obviously in close proximity to Portland, who has a huge problem, and do not designate public campground within its downtown. Why is Pendleton unable to adopt a similar time, place, and manner approach? What legal distinction makes Lake Oswego's ordinances defensible, but Pendleton's are not? I hope you answer all my questions. Cody Jones, thank you.
Okay, Mike Wister. Mike Wister. See you in the back. As he's making his way up here, if there's anyone else that would like to ask questions, and my list is getting shorter, so you still can sign up to be able to do so.
My name's Mike Wister. Can everybody hear me okay?
As long as you speak directly into the mic.
Well, this one really sucks. Sorry. Anyway, I was a teenager when they shut down the state hospitals, and I didn't really understand that. But if everybody looks back to when I was 17 years old and I'm almost 50 something, there was not a homeless problem. There was not a drug problem that we have in America. We had state hospitals, institutions for people that had issues. Moving along, not too long ago, a friend of mine's girlfriend was re-diagnosed at a community mental health place on a 10-minute appointment from a transgender person and changed their medication. Within 30 days, she lost her apartment. She tried to blow smoke up the dog's butt, literally. And we stepped in and tried everything. She became homeless. She's now renting from me. She had to be institutionalized. She has to take medication. I have a son that's bipolar. He could have been one of those casualties. But when you don't teach people to fish, and you give them fish, and give them, and give them, and give them, how much is it going to cost? This proposal, I'm totally against. I do not settle. I'm against it 100% because there is no cost projection on what's going to take to maintain their demands. I'll say something really popular. Why don't we just open up the Roundup Stadium and let the homeless stay there? There, we have ADA bathrooms, we have all kinds of stuff, and it's paid for. This is ridiculous on this proposal. I don't care if it costs $1 million to fight it. I would spend it because it's going to cost $5 million to keep giving them fish. It is ridiculous. And thank you for your time and have a good day.
Hey, Jared Broadfoot.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Can everyone hear me? I'm just going to echo what everyone else said here. Absolutely opposed to the settlement, but I'm going to take a little different approach here. I'm going to talk to everyone and the voters who just voted in May for what they wanted and point out that, in my observation, the city's running a master class on political theater. We've had a lack of information. We're all asking for information, and here we are just about a week after that this was all announced, and we know we have more information to review. One of the things that I wanted to point out is I believe the city's failed to build an adequate administrative record showing it considered endangered species, water quality, treaty resources, and the sensitive riparian corridor of the Umatilla River before adopting this settlement. We have other state laws, we have other federal laws, we have Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, and the cultural viability of the Umatilla River should have been considered by this council way before now. There needs to be more outside of the box thinking. We need to engage more stakeholders and voters. Simply holding a hearing a week after releasing this, and from everything I've read online, it really feels like the decision's been made. Feels like that the decision was made a while ago and that this is just a rubber stamp or a formality for us to come here, oppose it, and then watch you guys vote it in. I would suggest to the citizens who just voted in May that if the council decides to pass an ordinance, that we have the referendum option open to us to collect signatures and repeal such an ordinance that they may pass. So we do have power as voters. We also have our vote at the ballot box. So I would encourage everyone to keep that in mind, and I would ask the city council to oppose this settlement and actually think outside the box and include more creative processes to focus on what's really important. This should not be an attack on a group of people. We need to look at behavior, cleanliness. We need to be held accountable to the same standards. I don't get to defecate on the Umatilla River or on the sidewalk without penalty. And I think that we ought to focus on those behaviors and not the people, but I would encourage you to look at the wildlife habitat and the cultural viability of our walkway in Umatilla River, because it's not only housing endangered salmon and steelhead, but it's important to a lot of sportsmen and women who like to fish and hike down there. So I can't go hike on the or camp on the river. I would on the riparian zone, and no one else should be able to as well. So with that, again, I'd ask you to oppose this settlement and work towards changing the ordinance, which you have the full power and ability to do, and work with us, the voters and the citizens, instead of against us. Thank you so much.
A cloud haze.
Thank you. My name's Cloud Hayes. Sorry, I'm short. I'm a local attorney, work in downtown. I also volunteer with a lot of homeless outreach, and I'm happy to call many members of our homeless community my friend. There are a lot of problems with the treatment of homeless people in this city, but I do believe that this settlement should be accepted. I think that there are a lot of things that have been said that don't touch on this settlement. This settlement creates a longer area of resting to give homeless people a longer opportunity to gather their things, to relocate, a place to stay during the day. All of our services right now available kick homeless people out at 6 a.m. The current resting ordinance, the warming station, the Promise Inn. They have nowhere to go during the day except public lands, which they are continuously trespassed from. They have no access to bathrooms. I have talked to some that say the only access to a bathroom they have is a local gas station that allows them in. People are upset about their presence on the streets in Main Street. They're upset that people are defecating on the sidewalks, that their camps are strewn about the street. This settlement addresses those issues. It gives them a bathroom. It gives them a place to rest. It gives them more time to gather their things, a place to stay that may not be Main Street. But I will also remind everyone on this council and everyone in this room that our homeless community is just that, our community. They are voters. They are your constituents. They are people that we should care about just as much as people that are housed in this community. And they have much less opportunity for their voices to be heard and their concerns to be addressed. I strongly encourage the city council to accept this settlement and start working towards addressing some of those issues that have repeatedly outcast our homeless community, and work towards efforts that'll make it more likely that our homeless community can find housing and resources in the future. Thank you.
Okay, I believe we have an individual online, Leslie Thompson. Leslie, I would ask that you unmute. Please state your first and last name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes as well.
Oh, can you hear me now? Hello? Hello?
You're good. You're good.
Okay, thank you. I'm calling as one of the newest residents of Pendleton. I recently bought a house within the last couple months because of family in the area. And looking at the problem with homeless, I probably would not have relocated into Pendleton. I'm coming from Juneau, Alaska, where we have a lot of the same problems. And we have built not one, not two, but 3 housing first facilities. And now we're on the 4th. And we have a warming shelter, and we have a camping place, and we have a homeless shelter. And what I've seen is if you build it, they will come. And I think sometimes it's a little difficult to provide services. Pendleton will drop people off, or who knows what communities will drop other people off. But I also want to say, as part of Salvation Army, I've been very involved with up here in Juneau feeding the homeless, but I've helped in Pendleton. And they do a tremendous job helping to feed people every day. And some just are so grateful, and some demand it. And I'd also like to put in a little positive for the mayor. He took a big hit on social media saying what a terrible person he was, and personal attacks on serving the homeless. So I think I see both sides of the issue, but I agree, having been involved in homeless issues in Alaska and working for the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority, there's so many solutions, but not everybody has all of them. So I just pray that we can all come together as a community to come up with a solution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to in person. Jill Johnson.
Thank you for bringing everyone together this evening to give us information and to listen to concerns. It is a big issue, but the homeless issue is a huge issue. And what you are asking us to think about today is just one piece, if I understand correctly. It's just how long someone is allowed to rest or camp on the designated areas. And it doesn't really change anything else. It doesn't concentrate more services downtown. It doesn't cost us money for other services. It sounds as though money that would go towards this settlement would actually be put towards some enhancements that should solve some of the problems that the downtown owners are legitimately complaining about. One of the things that I'm not clear about is how much money we would spend in litigation versus how much money is spent in a settlement, and what that difference might be to this city. Thank you.
Mike Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike Collins. I just have some questions. One question, how much has the city already spent on this litigation? And then the other question I have is a clarification. So I understand there's going to be a new 24-hour notice before someone can be removed, but before you can go to the 72-hour notice provision of the state statute. Does that apply just to the designated rest areas, or does it apply to any public property? So for example, if someone wanted to camp right out in front of City Hall or on the steps of the Vert, would these requirements apply to them, or is there a different standard if you're not in a designated area? Thank you.
Okay, this is my last call, in person or online. Okay. Hearing none, we're going to move into some of the questions that we've had. Do we have one online? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could please state your first and last name for the record.
Yes, my name is Lori Smith.
Okay, thank you, Lori. You can go.
Okay, thank you. I'm calling on behalf, I am a younger resident of Pendleton. Me and my husband live here. We recently moved here within the last 3-4 years. We have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. And luckily I am able to be a stay-at-home mom. My husband works very hard. But the reason I would like to give my opinion is, as someone who goes to these public places frequently with my children, my concern is that this passes and the homeless people are able to stay in these areas longer, it's going to increase their presence in more places. So for example, we go to the public parks all the time, and it's really sad when we can only go to certain parks. And I'm also a part of a lot of other mom groups that get together and get their children together. And for us, it's really sad when we have to choose between, well, we can't go to that park, we can only go to this park because there's needles or homeless people or other situations. And I understand that this isn't really going to change perhaps where they may already be, but our concern is going to move them to other places that they aren't currently in. So for example, they might be only at these parks, but what's going to stop them from going further? If they can be there for longer periods, why wouldn't they go to the nicer parks? Why wouldn't they go to the nicer restrooms where it's not crowded? And that's our concern. Not only that, but when I want to take my kids to downtown and spend my money at downtown businesses, I don't feel comfortable taking my kids downtown without my husband because of what might be happening in front of us. I don't want my son or my daughter to see someone defecating on the sidewalk or exposing themselves or seeing somebody in that state. So not only am I not going downtown and spending my money at downtown businesses, but we don't feel comfortable doing so. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. There's someone else online.
Hi, my name is Taylor Pickett. My husband and I, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, thanks. My name is Taylor Pickett. I own a home and some land in city limits in Pendleton. My husband and I bought that in 2021, and it was a major fixer-upper. Since then, we have relocated to Heppner, but we have this house as a rental part-time to college rodeo kids and other part-time Airbnb. We have had numerous issues with the homeless, cutting through my chain link fence several times, stealing many items, leaving garbage everywhere for me to clean up. It's scary. I got tired of staying there alone without my husband, and now my renters that are college kids are also spooked if not all of them are there. This has just been very sad because I did go to college in Pendleton and I had family grow up there, and it's just gotten worse and worse. And I pay taxes. We have civic duty. Sometimes when you go camping, you can't camp for free. You have to pay for that. These homeless people, I'm not saying all of them, but they don't do that. They don't pay for power. They don't pay for sewer. They don't pay for water like we do. So why should we have to clean up after them and continuously deal with this? If this gets passed, I only think the problem is going to get worse and worse because it's going to get more and more people. And it's sad. I'm very opposed of this passing. Thank you.
Thank you. We have someone else online that's going to unmute, and then you can come up.
Got me?
Yes. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Zachary Podesta. Sorry, my camera isn't working. But I understand where you guys are all coming from about, the homeless leaving messes everywhere and going to the bathroom and whatnot. But you have to understand that there's only a select few homeless people that are like that, and they set the bad precedence for everybody else. Like me, I'm trying to make it. I've been here for 4 years, and I stay at the Promise Inn right now. I've been there. This is my 5th time there. I have over 15 applications in for apartment complexes, and I can't get them because I have felonies that are 10 and 16 years old. And it's ridiculous. And I'm having the hardest time finding places because of that. I haven't had a felony. I haven't been in trouble. I haven't been arrested in almost 6 years. And yet I'm still not able to find places because of homeless and being looked at like I'm a virus or plague. Like I have my dog, I can't get a job because I have nowhere to put him. And I heard somebody say earlier that we have nowhere to go during the day. That's right. Like we go from the Promise Inn to the street and back. That's it. I remember I was sitting on the sidewalk about a month ago, waiting to go into the Promise Inn, and an officer came up and gave me a $500 ticket for just sitting there. I don't have any money. How am I expected to pay a $500 ticket for just? I collect cans so that I can feed my dog rather than go and steal food or whatever. I'm trying to do the best that I can, and I know that there are a lot of other people out there too that are trying to do the best that they can as well. So please don't let those few that are making it seem like we are all just bottom of the barrel. A lot of us aren't. A lot of us are trying, and I'm hoping that soon I'll have a place of my own and can get a job and get back on track and get my life together. Because it's been 10 years. I want my life back. It's my dream to have it back. So please don't lose faith. Oh.
Oh.
Hello? Okay, I won't hold it. I'll hold it, I mean. After listening to everybody, this has pretty much already been said, but where I thought one thing was kind of important was that I think there's one question that every taxpayer would appreciate, and that is that before taxpayers and all of us approve any sort of agreement, could the city or the city council put together a side-by-side comparison showing the estimated cost of litigation, estimated 5 and 10 years cost of implementing the settlement, estimated ongoing operating costs, and the financial risk associated with each option? Thank you.
My name is Vicki Dessler. I've lived in Pendleton since 1975. I was born and raised in Hermiston. So I have more of a comment. Stay there. Okay. It'll just be, I'll walk around in circles since I do get a little nervous. So I just have one thing to say. Pendleton is a community that is rich in community service. Everything you can imagine. So where are our funded agencies? Hello? Where have you guys been hiding in taking care of these people that do not have a home? Some are homeless for a good reason, and some are homeless by choice. I've worked in social services since 77. I retired earlier this year from a part-time job working for an attorney. So I've been in contact with the majority of these nonprofits. They do not provide complete and total wrap-around services. You really need to look at that picture and see what can happen. I don't know if any of you guys know me. Any of you were my previous clients. I've had them even call me now to ask for advice. So wraparound services do work. If you can come up with a plan that's going to incorporate that type, I think that it might be more successful for the residents of Pendleton.
My name is Anthony Bowman, and I have one question for our attorney. I know you're recommending litigation, but if we don't go that way, do you feel you can win? And if you don't, why do we hire you?
Okay, can you guys hear me now? Okay, sorry, we've gone through 3 right here. Okay, do we have anyone else that would like to provide public comment or ask a question in person? Okay. If you could just please state your first and last name for the record. You're good. Let's see. Nope. Let's wait just a second. I think we can hear it. Thank you.
Does it work? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very lagged, but yes. My name is Bridget Donaldson. I am not currently a member of this community, but my entire family is born and raised here. We still have property.
If you could speak a little bit louder, directly into it.
My name is Bridget Donaldson. I'll try to make it quick. This is an issue about housing and shelter in public areas, but it's also a public health and safety risk. I'm a registered nurse. I work directly with this population every single day that I go to work. The hospital provides us with proper protective equipment against communicable diseases we could receive from all of the things that are on the streets of Pendleton. I think children deserve to have safe places in public places to be able to run around barefoot and not have to worry about contracting hepatitis from a dirty needle. I think it's not just a shelter issue, it's a public health and safety issue for not only the adults of this community, but the children. So I hope you further negotiation, it's not just a sheltering issue.
Thank you. Do we have another over here? Okay, Roy, if you could please state your first and last name for the record.
My name is Roy Jones. And this is not an issue that will be solved tonight. The concerns of homelessness and drug issues and crime is something that will be an ongoing concern. And I urge you to continue to find ways to combat that. I understand that you are looking and working on that already. What's before us tonight is a very pragmatic situation that is in regards to this lawsuit and this settlement. I feel that the people that we have elected as the mayor and the city council are here to represent the city of Pendleton in doing what is best for the city. This is not a perfect solution. However, it would appear that the best path forward for us at this time is to approve the settlement. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone else who would like to provide public comment? I'm seeing none. Do we have any online? Okay, at this point in the evening, I know we have people leaving, but we are going to go through some of the common questions that were asked. There will be, our attorney has written down questions as you're going. I don't know if staff has a list as well, but we are going to go back and forth between the city manager, our city attorney, as well as potentially the chief of police for a few of the questions that we have.
First of all, thank you all again for taking the time tonight. I do want to clarify a couple things, but I also hope that I will do my best to answer these questions directly and not try to sound like a lawyer trying to sell you something. That's really not my goal here. My goal here is really to provide you with information. So I want to address the cost issue first, because this was a big concern for staff and for my office in negotiating this settlement agreement. And so we really looked long and hard at what these costs would be for the settlement agreement. The unfunded mandate question, there are no unfunded mandates. Basically what we have is furthering what we already have in place, except changing it slightly to make it in conformance with state law. Right now, the city has a resting ordinance, and it has resting locations where individuals experiencing homelessness are allowed to camp. The proposed ordinance and settlement agreement uses those exact same locations. There's no changes in those locations as far as expanding them. There were a couple that were taken off the list, but there were no expansions. So what we really have here is not a change, a drastic change from what you have in place today. The locations are the same. The enforcement procedures are basically the same. We have the same 72-hour limit or requirement that exists today, that we use today, will apply to this new ordinance. So there aren't really additional costs as far as enforcing the ordinance is concerned. If there are, they're very similar to what we have today. And so this is not a situation where you have unfunded mandates or unknowns about what's going to happen into the future. The key point there too is that if something arises, an unforeseen circumstance that we're not aware of today, but none of this is set in stone. You as the city and your city council has the ability to change these ordinances to address those situations. So I want to make that abundantly clear. As I said before, this is the beginning of the road, not the end of the road. As some of the speakers suggested tonight, there are lots of other problems and issues associated with the homeless population in Pendleton that are not addressed by this ordinance or the settlement agreement. And those are the types of situations that I was talking about earlier tonight, where if you settle the litigation, you can spend your time, efforts, and resources focusing on those issues, whether that's littering, drug use, other problems that people mentioned tonight. That's where you can focus your attention by putting this litigation behind you. The sheltering ordinance is really just addressing those areas where individuals experiencing homelessness are allowed to camp. And again, those are the same locations that exist today. This was not a change. So, well, let me address that question about why did you hire me and why am I making this recommendation if I'm not out to win? And I think it depends on how you define win. And sure, I'll litigate this issue and I'll fight in court. And I'm telling you, based on how this is played out in other jurisdictions, the city is likely going to lose. So how I define a win is something that improves the community and something that makes this a better situation to be able to address the concerns that you all raised tonight. And the way to do that is not to focus on trying to win litigation, but focus on those issues that you all raised tonight. So again, for me, defining win is defining what's best for the community and finding out how you can move forward and address these concerns. Because this ordinance nor the settlement agreement is intended to address those issues. That's not what this litigation is about. That's not what the state law in question is about. And so as we look to the future and you try to figure out how do you address this issue, how do you get the federal government to live up to what they said in 1982? How do you get the state to live up to what it's promised and never delivered on? How do you spend your time and resources lobbying to get that money, to get that regional facility? Those are the kinds of efforts that you can have and take when you put the litigation behind you. Or you can spend the resources instead of on those things on the litigation. That's kind of the choice before you tonight. And I certainly absolutely respect and understand all these other concerns. They are 100% legitimate. I am not trying to minimize those concerns in the least bit. But what I want to make clear is that this settlement agreement is not intended to address those issues. The litigation is not intended to address those issues. This is really about where people are camping and how they're allowed to camp, and that's it. And so we can litigate this issue and spend time and resources doing that, or spend time and resources trying to figure out solutions to these other problems that people raised tonight.
just was going to add if staff wants to add anything as well to that. I know Chad has pages of questions, so I'll give an opportunity. Okay.
So just, Madam Mayor, some of the a question that I have, I think one of the questions that I have written down is the cost of litigation. So the cost of litigation that I've been given on the low end is $250,000. I think other costs that have been asked for is the cost of the settlement agreement. So we have the most significant impact that this lawsuit would have in terms of operating costs for the city would be the maintenance of the and ongoing costs of the 24/7 bathroom. We pay $40,000 a year to operate all of our bathrooms throughout the city's park system. We do have vandalism in our bathrooms throughout the city. We've never had 24/7 bathrooms before. To do a deep dive on what the vandalism would be on bathrooms that are 24/7, it would be hard for us to come up with a number on what that's gonna look like. But and then we also have camp cleanup costs that are associated with sheltering. What we're talking about is transitioning from essentially an 8-hour resting period. The 72-hour posting notice is something that's already in law. It's something that we have to practice now. So we're really talking about shifting from an 8-hour to a 24-hour. So the camp cleanup costs, we think, is gonna. In my opinion, there's not going to be a significant change in those camp cleanup costs. So the big cost difference is going to be in the bathroom costs. And again, it would be hard for us to come up with a really solid number on what those costs are. But I think those are some of the questions that come up right off the top of my head to answer at least the cost question. And I know we have other questions that are posed before us as well, and council might have others as well.
So another one of the questions was related to what is the difference between resting versus camping? So resting is what is in the current ordinance, and sheltering is what is in the new ordinance. Neither of those necessarily define or use the word camping, but sheltering is pretty much the equivalent to camping. Where resting is basically defined under the existing ordinance as just stopping to rest. So if you stop and you rest and you're not setting up a campsite, you're just sitting down in a park, that could be deemed resting. There's a question, is the state government attacking our ordinances? There's no one specifically attacking ordinances, but what the state government did is they adopted a statute that requires the city to have an ordinance in place. So in essence, if you want to look at it as the state attacking the previous ordinance that said no camping allowed, period, then the answer is yes. The state told us we can't do that anymore. But the state isn't a party to this lawsuit. The state isn't the one saying your existing ordinance is not objectively reasonable, but the state is the one holding us to the objectively reasonable standard. There was a question about when was the basic when was the basic agreement agreed upon? When did the agreement come about? This was a agreement that was negotiated for several months, and then we brought it to the council for discussions and feedback, and went back to the plaintiffs and their counsel based on some of the feedback from council to make some additional changes, and it got finalized last week. Was when the document that is being presented tonight was actually finalized. So it's only been in place about a week. So there's a question about, can we just amend the ordinance without settling the lawsuit? And the answer to that is yes. The council can absolutely amend the ordinance without settling the lawsuit, but that doesn't necessarily get us out from under the threat of litigation. And so we'll still have to spend time and money litigating over the old ordinance and possibly even the new ordinance. And we can certainly make some arguments to try to get the case dismissed on those grounds, but it also doesn't give us the benefit of having the other side sign off on the settlement. And the benefit of having the other side sign off on the settlement is that that provides us with protection against future litigation, because by agreeing to this settlement, the other side is agreeing that the ordinance that's being proposed is objectively reasonable and meets the standards of state law. Whereas if we went out on our own and just adopted an ordinance, it doesn't preclude the other side from saying, we still don't believe that your ordinance is objectively reasonable, and therefore we want to continue the litigation. Whether that's this existing lawsuit or they file a new lawsuit, that threat remains. So the way to get out from under that threat is to reach a settlement agreement that both parties agree to, so therefore they've already committed to saying that the law is objectively reasonable. There were questions about ADA accessible and why do we have locations within downtown. And so the issue about ADA accessible camping sites or sheltering sites, again, are those locations that already exist. And what the settlement agreement proposes is that we, as long as we are maintaining areas within the city where we're allowing people to camp, that we have to maintain at least 2 ADA accessible sites. And they have to be within a 1.5 mile radius of City Hall, which is defined as the downtown area. The other party has agreed that 4 of our existing sheltering sites satisfy that obligation. So if we have to get rid of 2 of them, we will still have 2 more. And so this isn't creating an obligation to create more sheltering sites within the downtown area, nor is it taking away sheltering sites that already exist outside of the downtown area. It's just saying that to the extent that we maintain sheltering sites, we can't remove all 4 of these off of the list. And the reason being is because of the topography of the city, that there needs to be sort of flat lands in which people can have access and actually get to the campsites. And that was the reasoning behind having those 4 locations. But again, none of those are new locations, and none of those are adding locations to the downtown area. They are all existing locations. No, no. No. So there's different formats. Did everyone hear that question, by the way? So I'll repeat the question to the extent I can. I'm sorry, I'm trying. I'll talk as slow as I can and as close to the mic as I can. So the question was, if the city wanted to create, and correct me if I get this wrong, a single sheltering site where we could have people locate, would that preclude us from removing the 4 ADA sites that I was just talking about? So let me just clarify that the settlement agreement requires us to keep those sites when we have situations like we have now with this sheltering map. So if what you're proposing is having one site outside of the downtown area, instead of having these sheltering sites all over the city, then you are not required to have these 4 spaces within 1.5 miles of downtown. So one of the questions was about expanding services available downtown will exacerbate issues. And as one of the speakers mentioned, what we really are trying to do with the settlement agreement is only providing money towards 2 things. One would potentially be a day center, and the other would be for a warming shelter when the temperature got below, I believe it's 34 degrees, 36 degrees. It's not, the money from the settlement agreement is not going to provide any other services. And the goal of those 2, the day center and the warming shelter, is to make sure that there are places for individuals experiencing homeless to go that are off the street to try to address some of these other issues that have been raised tonight. Because if they don't have anywhere to go, as one of the speakers suggested, that's when issues arise. So we're trying to provide locations for individuals experiencing homelessness to be able to go during the day so they're not on the street and in other locations around the city.
Do you have a question specifically?
So part of that has to be decided between city staff and the service providers. As you heard, one of the representatives from Neighbor to Neighbor spoke tonight, and they haven't agreed yet to what expanded services would apply. And then we're also talking about a day shelter, which would be a different type of situation that would allow provide for a space for individuals to go during the day, but not at night. And so depending on what agreement can be reached with these service providers will dictate what standards would apply in the future. We don't have the answer to that question yet. So the question was, is $120,000 supposed to pay for all this? And the answer is no, but that's all that the city is obligating itself to pay under the settlement agreement. It doesn't mean that the city or other entities, whether it's a grant from nonprofits, funding from the federal government, funding from the state, those are all options that are available looking forward. But what the settlement agreement in the narrow scope of this issue tonight, the city is only obligating itself to paying $120,000 towards that funding. And that funding, as I understand it, is funding that the city was already working towards utilizing. So this is money that is not going to have a major impact on the city's budget.
Do you have one that adds on to any of the questions that we've had already?
So again, let me clarify that if what the question was changing the way camping is occurring in the city to creating a single camping location, as opposed to having multiple locations all across the city, the settlement agreement does not require these additional sites. So, I'm going to try to get through some of these other questions. I know that people have a lot of follow-up questions, but I don't think we're going to be able to get through the list of everyone who asked questions if we keep taking more questions.
We're going to keep going with the questions that were asked.
So one of the questions was, can the city think outside the box and consider other options and other analysis on sites? And the answer is yes. And that's what the settlement agreement is trying to provide the city with opportunities to do. We want to remove the threat of this litigation and allow you all to focus on these other creative options to address the concerns and issues that were raised through most of the public comment. Part of that process was also questions about environmental impacts. And so again, the city did not change any of the sheltering locations. They are all the same that exist today. So there was no legal requirement to do additional legal analysis on the sheltering locations and environmental impacts. It doesn't mean that the city can't take those issues into consideration in the future as it looks to potentially change the way it provides these services or change the types of locations where sheltering is permitted. But for the purposes of this settlement agreement, we were not required to engage in that type of analysis because the locations did not change from where they exist today. So part of the questions, and one of the questions on the list, is how does this protect us from future litigation? There is no one way to protect yourself 100% from future litigation. But as I said a couple minutes ago, what this litigation does is it allows us to know that the other side has agreed that this sheltering ordinance is objectively reasonable, so they will not be suing us under this ordinance. There's a lot of questions coming from the audience. What about somebody else? The short answer to that is you can't protect 100%. But I can tell you, in working with other jurisdictions who have worked with the affected community, who have worked with other members of the community in adopting their ordinance, they have not been sued. They're not the ones in litigation. And so that is the strongest protection that we have right now against future litigation. I wish I could come up here and tell you that there's a clear path, a silver bullet to protecting the city from ever being sued again. If you have a lawyer that tells you that, they're lying to you. Even if we took this litigation and won the litigation all the way through the Court of Appeals, it would not preclude someone else from suing us again based on new facts. And so while I'd love to tell you, absolutely settle this, there's no future threats, I can't tell you that. And a lawyer who does is not someone you want to trust. But what I can tell you is that this settlement does give you the best path forward against having the same litigation filed. Because the people who are engaged in this litigation are the people who are on the other side in this lawsuit. And if they've signed off on it, other lawyers around the state will take note of that and realize that there's not really a good cause of action in Pendleton, and they'll move their sites to a different jurisdiction.
We have a couple of questions that are in here that may be more for police. So I do want to ask, I know Chief Nelson is walking kind of towards the back. Chief Nelson, could you please come to the front? So we received some questions on the cards. There was a question regarding resting areas by the river. Chad spoke to that specifically. There was a comment that said, I would like to approve the settlement and use the money for our community instead of lawyers. And then there are a couple questions that might be in your purview. So I think this speaks to the concerns people had about drug use or illegal activity. So the question is, what do we do when people are smoking or doing illegal drugs below our apartments and it comes into our residences or in our proximity?
Call the police department. I released our stats for this year so far. For those that have not seen it, I take enforcement rather seriously for this community. I've been working for this community for 26 years. As of right now, as of today, from the beginning of this year till today, we have taken 13,241 incidents. We have arrested 642 individuals. We are extremely busy for this community. We are still dealing with the effects of ballot measure 110. We're going to be feeling the effects of that for years to come. The litigators in our area, the DA's office, is struggling with getting all of our cases through, not just ours, but every community within this county. We are not the only ones feeling this issue, but if you see drug use, call us. We are there. There are only 28 of us. We take our role in this community very seriously, and we will show up every single time.
Okay, so then this is maybe more of a comment, but I think it does pertain as well. So this one, I'm just going to read it as it says here. So why are there no right to rest areas anymore? Why do the homeless get tickets for taking a nap in the parks when families don't? Why do the ones that have a house not have the same laws? So this might not all be on you, Chief. This might be our staff responding as well.
You might have to repeat that. I'm sorry. I'm getting old and hard of hearing. I struggled with that one.
Essentially about enforcement. This individual is implying that there are no additional right to rest areas that people can be in, that homeless are getting tickets for taking naps in the parks when families don't.
No, I would disagree with that. As it is right now, our resting ordinance is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And yes, at 6 o'clock in the morning, our officers are out enforcing our current resting ordinance. That will change if the new ordinance is enacted. But as of right now, at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:05, we are enforcing our current resting ordinance. We are not enforcing that throughout the day unless it is building structures and things of that, which is an obvious violation of our current resting ordinance. And as it is right now, once we tag resting locations or encampments, we are still bound by the 72 hours before we can remove them.
So specifically because this references parks, can either Chad or yourself speak to parks and how this is dealt with now?
Parks are separate. They have their own timeline. They are closed from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So if they're in parks after hours, it is considered trespassing. So we already enforce that as it is. As of lately, we've been locking every restroom in all the parks except for Trailhead Park, which is listed as a 24-hour park. So in a sense, at 10 p.m., there should not be anyone inside the parks except for the river levee, which is exempt.
So with regard to parks, in the future ordinance, the city is working on park rules that will govern conduct in parks for everyone to address some of the concerns that were raised this evening.
So then we have a couple additional questions. So this is, how will these ordinances improve life for the residents of Pendleton?
I think the way this ordinance improves the lives for residents of Pendleton is twofold. One, it provides clarity for everyone regarding how and where camping is allowable, which will make it easier for the police to enforce these laws. But more importantly, as I've said previously, is that it allows the city to move forward and focus more primarily on those issues that people were raising tonight related to livability in the city, as opposed to focusing on where sheltering is allowable.
Okay, and the final question that I have on a card, this is a question to the council. So you all can respond as you feel you would like to. So this is a question to all council people. It says, as a council person, have you or do you hire homeless people to work for you personally? And if so, how much do you pay them? And what type of work do you have them do?
I have hired homeless people to work for me to do yard work. This way. I have hired homeless people to work for me, and normally that's yard work, and I pay them $20 an hour. And as somebody who's involved in the community, a couple of times when something needed to be done and I needed bodies to help me, I said, I need help doing this. I need 4 people Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. And will you meet me such and such a place? And I have always had response. And I've done that like only 3 times. I mean, I'm not saying that's a regular thing. And I am part of the group who serves Sunday dinner at the Salvation Army. And I have been doing that since February of 2019 or 2020, I'm sorry. So I see homeless people regularly, but I certainly recognize all of the concerns everyone has mentioned. I see those too, and I do not take them lightly.
Okay. Chad, I'll let you go through any final questions that you have on here.
Sure, there's a couple more questions. And I'll try to summarize some of these because I think we've addressed a lot of them. But whether this particular settlement agreement is the best way to resolve the city's vulnerability under state law. And I think for right now, it is. I think looking to the future, I think you have options. And I think what the settlement agreement does again is allows you to explore those options moving forward. So I do think this does provide the best path forward to resolve your current vulnerabilities. There was an associated question related to the ordinance in Lake Oswego and closing parks. And this ordinance also does not permit camping, or sheltering as it's known under the ordinance in city parks. The other issue to understand is that a lot of cities across the state have enacted ordinances that they may have to review moving forward based on litigation that occurs in other parts of the state. Pendleton was brought to the front of that line because of this litigation. As this litigation resolves, other cities may find themselves in a similar situation. So just because the Pendleton proposed ordinance might go beyond what other jurisdictions are doing does not mean that those jurisdictions might not be taking similar steps moving forward.
Okay, we know that we were not likely able to answer absolutely every question presented, but we tried our best to go through this piece. We typically do not answer questions when we do public comment, but we felt it was important to provide as much information to the community as possible. And I would just ask staff if you have anything additional that you would like to add.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, just a couple of other items that I wrote down. One of the questions was the legal costs so far in the lawsuit. And so there's the caveat is this is information that I gathered on short notice to reaching out to the chief finance officer who's at home. But the information that he was able to give me that year to date, we've spent $26,000 in legal costs on this matter. And then also, I think a question came up with regarding to resting on the City Hall campus. So that we're proposing that the map would be limited to have limited hours, retain limited resting hours because of the proximity to events and also children at the recreation center, and also because of the extensive period of the notice period requirement, and we're proposing that all of the resting areas would be essentially on the south half of the block. And one of the questions that I have for Chad that was mentioned was, I think this is mentioned in the ordinance, would be anybody setting up, like, say, on the sidewalks or walkways. I think the scenario that was brought up is if somebody sets up a shelter or tent right up on a sidewalk or blocking a door. I think our ordinances prohibit that, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. The ordinance, both the existing ordinance and the ordinance as proposed tonight, precludes people from setting up tents and other sheltering activities outside of the sheltering locations. So that could be enforced against individuals who do so.
Okay, now is where we get to the piece of the meeting where I'm going to officially close the public hearing. And now is the time for council discussion. We have 3 matters before the council. The order in which we will discuss them is the proposed settlement agreement. Then we will discuss, if needed, ordinance 4052 and ordinance 4053. So this is the point of time of which you all have had a chance to ask questions and to make comments, and the council will have the same. I ask for the same respect that you all gave each other for the council as well to make these comments. So I would just open it up for discussion. And if any of the counselors want to discuss the proposed settlement, this would be the time to do so.
My question is regarding the potential expenses of litigation. I know we have a quote for the low end of that $250,000, but are there examples of other cities or other jurisdictions paying more as in damages? Are there instances of such damages?
The potential liability for the city mostly comes in the form of attorney's fees for the other side. And as of today, well, as of the time we negotiated the settlement, they were already claiming $125,000 in attorney's fees. And this is before we've actually filed anything in response to their complaint. So most likely, if we go through trial and even have to go to the Court of Appeals, you're talking several $100,000.
As a follow-up, that $125,000 in legal fees that have already been accrued are supplanted or replaced by the $120,000 in the settlement?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Can I follow up on that? I just want to clarify what the question was. I'm having a hard time hearing, as we all are. Okay, I want to clarify because I'm having a hard time hearing, as we all are. Was the question that Councilor Schulberg asked in reference to the $125,000 that's part of the settlement?
The question was whether sorry, the $125,000 that the Oregon Law Center is claiming in attorney's fees already is being supplanted by the amount of money that we are putting towards the warming shelter and the day shelter? And the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any additional comments from the council? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion that a council member would like to present regarding the settlement agreement?
I move that the City Council approve the release and settlement agreement as presented.
It's been moved by Councilor Ennis and seconded by Councilor Newman. Now is any time for an additional discussion from the council. You need to unmute. I think the council will be polled for the vote, but if you have a personal statement you would like to read ahead of that, this is the time for you.
Great. Is this working?
I believe so.
The state of Oregon has allowed this situation to fester and grow and has forced cities to deal with the fallout. This is unfair. I understand the arguments for settling this case and realize that settling this case would more than likely be the best financial decision for the city in the short term, assuming that all parties that have agreed to provide enhanced sheltering services follow through and are able to do this for the $120,000 earmarked. In addition, I have concerns regarding future costs the city might incur as to any assistance provided by the city to these sheltering services. I'm also concerned that the settlement sends a message about our community and that we could see future legal action. State laws refer to objective reasonableness and how cities deal with the homeless population and sheltering. This is the nebulous term open to interpretation. I believe we have been reasonable. While I've spoken with numerous citizens, tonight's meeting gives a clear read of where the community stands. I represent the citizens of Pendleton. I've wrestled with this decision. While settling this lawsuit appears to make short-term financial success, we have no guarantees that another party might decide to sue the city. Reworking our ordinance is a prudent decision, but does not preclude another group from suing us. I feel that as a community, we need to make a stand. I cannot support this settlement.
Okay. Counselor Thomas.
Good evening. I want to also echo what Councilor Mulvihill said in that my personal opinion that I have stated on numerous occasions is we are faced with this dilemma because the legislature and the governor has abdicated their responsibility. And I would be fully supportive of joining other cities in this state in filing a class action lawsuit against Governor Kotek and the legislature for failing to do the job they were elected to do. So I also, for the long-term financial fallout of this event, and the fact that I represent the citizens of Pendleton, particularly in Ward 1, I also do not support this settlement.
All right. Can you hear me? Okay. So my duties listed in this big book I was given when I first joined says that establishing policy for the city government may be derived by following these 4 steps. What is needed? Sources of this information may come from a council member's own observations, from individual citizen requests, citizen group requests, and from the recommendation of the city manager. Number 2, what is the will of the people? Much of what the public wants may be learned by carefully listening to comments of individuals, representatives of interested groups, and from the council members' own reactions. Number 3, what can be done? A council member's moral obligation to the public is to render decisions that are practical and economically feasible. The background experience of the city manager, his staff, and technical experts should be considered carefully. 4, and this one's long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll give you a gist. After determining the best policy, put your decision to work by adopting, defeating, modifying ordinance or resolutions. Essentially, take action. So here's my concerns and my thoughts. I'm going to post these to social media for the people who aren't here later. I am concerned about how Grants Pass was sued again on ADA ground. I am torn between the recommendations of our legal counsel and our staff, and I am torn between the known risks of ending this uncertain litigation and my mandate to listen to the will of the people who literally voted me out of office in large part because of this issue. You guys are asking us to take on the risk, financially and otherwise, of the unknown. We as a council have to consider the fact that local judges have recused themselves and the fact that if a preliminary injunction is filed, we won't be able to force any version of our arresting or sheltering ordinance. From my understanding, a changeable standard will be set if we settle. If a judge doesn't side with us, an unchangeable precedent will be set. We've been put into an impossible situation, as has been discussed by other counselors. This is an extremely tough decision, and like many of you, I have personal experiences with this issue. I want our home to feel safe. It sounds like many of you feel this decision. Sorry, it's so loud right here. Many of you feel like this decision has been rushed and the process hasn't been transparent enough. I want you to know that I hear your ask to slow down, allow you to digest the data, and to bring your voice to the table. My personal opinion would be that we continue to negotiate, but we have a motion on the table right now to settle. So I would be not in favor of that.
Do you have any additional comment from the council?
I can say that I came here tonight.
Steve, if you could put the mic closer to your face.
Oh, is this better? Better? Okay. I can say I came here tonight with an opinion. And I came with an open mind, and I listened to the people. And I am of the opinion that the settlement as is not suitable for us. However, I would ask that Neighbors for a Better Pendleton please participate in the negotiations going forward so that we're all on the same page and there's less misunderstanding and less miscommunication between the city council, our staff, and the citizenry.
Well, I think, whoa, my name is there, Linda Newman. And the reason I wanted to add something to the comments that have already been made is because I feel our council has been caught between a rock and a hard place. And one of my concerns is that we can move forward and pay attention and give our attention to good things that are happening in the city. We have many city programs that may have been undermined if we had gone forward, more money spent, and come to the same difficult decision that we all had to make tonight. Pendleton is a great city. I hope that we all can move forward from this, realizing that and knowing that what we're doing in Pendleton will benefit not only the people in this room, but the people who sit in those chairs 20 years from now. Thank you for coming.
Do we have any additional comment?
I also share the frustrations of this situation that we are in as a community. And it is very challenging to be put in this position by the state and by these lawsuits, and to not have many options going forward, to have the generality of language in our current legislation. And I suppose if further negotiation is on the table, then I could get on board with that. But as it seems, we've negotiated back and forth as far as we could to find an agreement. And frustrated as I may be, I think that to avoid future risk, to avoid risk in the meantime during litigation, to avoid complete inaction during a preliminary injunction, and to have what was stated as a changeable decision as opposed to an unchangeable precedent that would be the result of litigation. If we are faced with the yes or no, I would definitely support the settlement tonight, unless there is a legitimate avenue for further negotiation, which I suppose would be a question for Chad.
We can certainly ask the other side, but we have negotiated back and forth for several months, including going back to them with concerns raised by council. And so never say never, but I believe that we've pushed about as much as we can. And, you know, I work for the council, and if the council wants me to go back, I'll absolutely go back, but I can't promise that the other side will agree.
Sean?
My name is Sean Butler. I'm in Ward 2. I've been on City Council for 9 months. I'm fairly new at this. Joseph Hole won City 2 Ward by 50.15. That's about 28 votes. He would vote for Neighbors for a Better Pendleton, so I will be echoing Joe's vote because he won, and so that's where my vote's going to be tonight.
Okay, do we have any additional public comment from the council?
Can you hear me? Cool. All I want to say is I know we have negotiated this deal or settlement proposal back and forth for months. But at the end of the day, if our community doesn't accept it, it is our duty to go back and at least try to continue to negotiate. In addition to that, that gives the community their other ask, which is more time to digest the information and ask us questions.
Are there any additional comments from the council?
I guess my concern is that the issues that were raised tonight by the audience mostly are not relevant to this release agreement. The things that are in, I've read this release agreement carefully multiple times. The issues that are out there regarding homeless people and the issues downtown do not address the issues in this release agreement brought by the litigants. That had to do primarily with the resting ordinance, which we tried to address. And we will see. I mean, I would like to have what happen, which would be best for our city. And I believe in the rule of law. And that's what I believe that I am following, is the rule of law.
Okay, so I think I'm left. I get the opportunity to call on the council for the vote here. Many of you may not know that my role as a mayor is only to vote in the case of a tie with the audience. So you all know. So this is one where the counselors have the votes here, and you may not hear from me, so I'm going to let you know via a vote. The fact that as many of you came out here today continues to show this is an important issue. And what I can tell you is myself, the staff, and the council are committed to having these tough conversations. I've received a lot of public comment because I've been part of the council for 12 years. Frankly, these are conversations we as a community should have had a long time ago, and we didn't. I made a choice as the mayor to allow these community conversations to happen. This is what happens when you have tough conversations. It's messy, there's nothing clear, and there's no winner. And so what I will say is that I can speak as the mayor, and I believe as the council, that we're committed to continuing to have these conversations with you all. At the end of the day, we may not fully agree, but we're going to do what we believe is the best for our community. And we want our businesses to thrive. We want our community to thrive. And we're trying to do all we can to make sure that that happens. And so with that, I would ask, unless there's no additional comment, that Donna please polls the council. The question before the council is, the proposal is to approve the settlement as presented.
Counselor Schulberg.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell. Counselor Newman. Counselor Innes. Counselor Mulvihill.
No.
Counselor Thomas.
No.
Counselor McBride.
No.
Counselor Butler.
Okay, for those in the audience not keeping score, that it failed. So there was 3 in favor and 5 against. Okay, so where we are at this point, I just wanted to confer with our attorney. At this point, the council has chosen to not settle. Therefore, there will need to be additional conversations with our council of how we proceed going forward. This public hearing had to do with 2 ordinances as well. What I will say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, staff, at this time, there are no changes to our existing ordinance. It will remain in effect. The police will be enforcing it as so, and the council will not have further discussion on the 2 ordinances presented tonight. So my final thing I will say